Bryce, I think the Celeste Moa departure kind of sent me over the edge yesterday. This Utah team is just lost so much. And a lot of it is because of Kyle Whittingham. And honestly, I don't feel like it's been talked about enough. But when you say, has Utah won or lost the transfer portal? To me, if it's in a world of absolutes, they've lost the transfer portal because truth be told, they have lost some of their best players. And most of the guys they've gotten back are either good G5 guys, so unproven on the P4 level, or P4 backups. So because of Kyle Whittingham's departure, and yes, and also to say the Big Ten, right? Like Teo Johnson is gone, Dallas Vakalaki's at Penn State. So the Big Ten honestly could share the blame, but a lot of it goes to Kyle Whittingham. But if we are saying, did Utah win or lose the transport? Like if it has to be one or another, they probably lost because they're losing a lot of guys that I think could help Utah, could help Michigan make a playoff run. And they're getting back, honestly, what could be considered a lot of question marks.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Smith Snowden's one of those guys that, as you mentioned with Moa, big time losses for this Utah team. And part of that is, of course, Michigan and then those other schools that you mentioned with Penn State and the guys coming in and stealing a lot of this. But I would agree with you. I think that they lost in this transfer portal cycle, and that's unfortunate. I think this goes to show the current situation with NIL right now, with the way that maybe some recruits are unsure how Morgan Scalley is going to run that program. And that just takes some time to build that cachet back up to kind of prove himself. I think that Morgan Scalley, yeah, he's been there and he's been that stable force for Utah football. There's still also that, hey, it's time to prove yourself now. Prove that you could be a great head coach. And this is where you gain the trust of new recruits that are going to hit the transfer portal and new cycle of guys that come through in college football. And then it also goes to show the NIL situation and the waiting on the Ocho Capital money. I'm not 100% sure that money has shown up yet. And that's probably portions of why some guys aren't deciding to stick around at Utah. Maybe there's just more money to be had elsewhere. And that's a very real thing right now. And I think that I think that once Utah can get all of those different things aligned, then you'll start to see that momentum pick up with the transfer portal and just recruiting in general.
Yeah, it's just crazy to me the amount of guys Utah has lost, right? We spent the first segment talking about Dampier coming back. Well, Dampier is of just one of just 6 starters, like main starting contributors. Yes, I know there are guys who came in off the bench and played a role, right? But if you're looking at which of their 22 main starters are Utah getting back, it's Dampier, Wayshawn Parker, Larry Simmons, Jonathan Hall, Elijah Davis, and Jackson Benny. If we go to what they lost, well, first of all, just in the portal, right? It's John Henry Daly. It's Jonah Laia, Dallas Vakalahi, 2 defensive tackles, Smith Snowden, Teo Johnson, JJ Buchanan, not to mention Celeste Moa, who I thought was going to be great. So I mentioned those are a couple guys who hit the portal, but then that doesn't include the offensive line, some of the other guys off to the NFL draft. In total, Utah lost 16 starters from last year's team, Bryce. That's a lot to have to replace, especially when a team like a BYU, as much as it pains me to say it, like they're getting everyone back. They're probably winning the portal to me even more so than Tech, because I just disagree with the Sorsby investment, how much they went in on that. But BYU is probably winning the portal versus I look at a Utah and okay, they got some pieces. They could be good, but they're just so far from sure things. This Utah team's lost a lot, and I feel like it hasn't been talked about a lot.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I don't know that it's time to, sound the panic alarms, the panic button, all this stuff, because Utah's always had depth. They've always had people step up when they needed people to step up the most. This is an opportunity to show for this coaching staff, for Colton Swan, for
a lot of new coaching staff, to your point too.
Yes, for all of these people to show that the players that they have been developing over the last couple of years, that have been there in that system for maybe a year or two, that have been behind the starters, can step up and become starters and legitimate players for this football team. I've talked with Ken Niumatalolo before. He said that the philosophy in college football right now has to be a little bit of player development. Even though you don't think that you're going to be able to keep those players around, you still have to invest a little bit into player development, because some of those kids will indeed end up staying around. So we're going to find out, did the previous coaching staff and this current coaching staff invest a little bit into player development for the guys that are sitting behind the guys that hit the transfer portal, who are now going to step into these starting roles? And you're going to find out really fast next year, JT.
Yeah, I look at
Oh, Jordan.
oh, hey, that's a compliment. I love Jordan. So that is no offense at all here. But I look at like Jordan Gross, right? Like he is coming in as even a high school coach. I think he can do well here. If this offensive line isn't great in year one, I don't think that's all on him. Some of that would be on a Jim Harding, right? And some of that's just on the fact that these guys hadn't played a lot of football that are going to be starting for Utah football next season. Even some of the guys, right? Like they grabbed an offensive tackle from Montana State, like shout out Big Sky, but that's a massive leap. FCS to P4 football going against the David Bailey's moving on, but the David Baileys of the world that a Texas Tech has on their roster, that's a huge jump. But why I go back to all of this and I say I do think Kyle Whittingham deserves the most blame for why in a win-lose world Utah's lost the transfer portal is because it's one thing to lose a Smith Snowden, who's officially a Michigan Wolverine now, a John Henry Daly. It's one thing to lose those guys. It's another thing to go Jonah Laia, JJ Buchanan, Celeste Moa. They are a tier below those other guys. And a lot of those guys too seemed like they were pretty committed to Utah. And then all of a sudden they hit the portal and pretty quickly it becomes Michigan. Those to me are the type of roster additions Kyle Whittingham is only making because he saw those guys day in, day out at practice and believes what they can contribute there. So had Witt just retired, I do think those are the type of guys that would be at Utah. Hence why I think there could be more of an argument of Utah winning the portal. But when even your second level, like your top guys are leaving and then your solid starters are even leaving, that's where it just becomes that much tougher, Bryce.
Yeah, no doubt about it. 100%. If Kyle Whittingham would have just stepped away from football and not have coached any further, or if Utah, all of those scenarios, then I would agree with you. I don't think a lot of those guys are leaving this program. And so with Witt at Michigan, this is a new era that Utah's going to have to navigate. And I think it can't come soon enough that those Otro Capital checks need to cash as soon as possible, JT, because they need as much money and as much opportunity to go out there and land a lot of these recruits because unfortunately in our day and age, a lot of recruiting has turned into how much money can you get me? And that's like the first thing that comes out of these guys' mouth. How much money are you going to be able to offer me? And a lot of times, I don't blame them. You go to where the money's at. Yeah, you take in some other things into account, like how big of a stage are they playing and all this stuff. I think it's close enough that whoever's giving the most money is probably going to be able to retain that. Plus, whoever has the most playing time. I would say those are the top two things for the majority of recruits.
I totally agree with that. And one thing before we jump off to our next topic, Bryce, I think it's a really interesting question. Like, is Utah more likely to repeat what they did last year? Or to me, like right now, I'm very tempted to be like, oh, what's Utah's record prediction next season? If we want to jump that far ahead,
Yeah.
I lean almost towards an 8-4 because I look at how much they lost. Now, granted, the schedule's not bad at all. Like they don't have to go to Tech, even in Oklahoma State, that's made a lot of noise. Like they miss them. Houston should maybe their toughest opponent outside of BYU, but even Houston and BYU both have to come to Rice-Eccles Stadium. Like Utah has to go to TCU, to Kansas, they go to TCU, to Iowa State, to Colorado, to Cincy, to Arizona. Like that's just a lot of like, those aren't that daunting of teams as we stand here today. So there's part of me that might lean more towards 8-4. I'd say right now I probably do just without any questions. But when I look at the schedule, in some ways I do think they could get back to 10-2, right, Bryce?
I'm really bad at this prediction thing because I said BYU with a freshman quarterback wasn't going to be as good as what they were. And
you and me both.
Be really good. I said in fact, I will out myself to all of your listeners. I said that there's no way that they would win double-digit games with a freshman quarterback. And I kind of got that one wrong too. So with that being said, take this with a grain of salt. It's possible Utah could do that, but I also lean towards the 8-4 mark, maybe 9 wins, 8 to 9 wins, maybe.
It's just the entire starting offensive line. Like, I just don't think that won't be talked about enough because it's not sexy to talk about offensive linemen, but it's arguably the second most important position. I would say it's some combination of quarterback, like defensive ends getting after the QB, and then how you protect them with the offensive line. And Utah has a lot of work, and they're replacing the entire defensive line.
And a brand new offensive playbook with Kevin McGivern coming in. It seems like look, the more we're talking about it, the more it seems like, I'd lean towards an 8, maybe 8 wins,
And like you mentioned Ken, who you had on from San Jose State, their head coach. I'm going to butcher his last name just so I don't want to. Yeah, thank you. I'll let you say that again. So, but he's the guy that I look at and I go, just 2 years ago, he reassigned Kevin McGivern from offensive coordinator to just pass game coordinator. So does that mean he doesn't like Kevin McGibbon? No. We're just saying he didn't feel like there was enough there where he was the best offensive coordinator option at a G5 team. So then he shifted around. Then he has a good year at Utah State. He did, but he's also just a couple years removed from McGibbon was, and the entire staff were dismissed at Oregon State with just one win his last time as P4 coordinator. So there's a lot this Utah football team has to figure out. This episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. The college football playoff is here, and FanDuel is giving all customers even more ways to get in on the action every single game day of the playoffs. Because right now, every college football playoff is game day. FanDuel users get a profit boost waiting for them in the app. Here's what I love about it. You get a profit boost on the bets you already feel good about. Ride with your favorites when you think a team controls the matchup. Take a shot on the underdog if you feel an upset coming, or build a parlay around the players and moments you think will decide the game. Then you apply the profit boost and go even bigger with your winnings. And when you win, FanDuel pays out instantly, which is perfect for playoff football. FanDuel is the best place to get in on the action all playoff long, so visit FanDuel.com to get your college football playoff profit boosts every game day. And it's not just college football. It's the NFL, it's the NBA, it's NHL, it's college basketball. FanDuel has you covered.